Kia ora and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Lounge, which is a space for healthcare leaders to take a moment to pause, to reset, and then to feel ready for your week ahead. I'm Katie and I'm your host for the Leadership Lounge, and with a background of 30 years of working in healthcare, I now help leaders manage the demands and the complexity of their roles so that they, you, can feel excited and hopeful about the amazing work that you do. So welcome to another episode and thanks for joining. Now, recently here in Aotearoa, we celebrated Pink Shirt Day. Now, I've done a bit of an email, I've done a bit of a blog post, and it's probably a topic that I think is quite important, and it's another one of those topics that I think we celebrate for that one day, but actually this is stuff that we need to know all the time. And yes, the days are really, really great for raising awareness, having conversations. I think they are fabulous, and it's why I get behind them all the time. But it's about, okay, and so now what? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the background of it, where it's come from, what it means, give some specific healthcare references, and then pointing to a couple of stories or a couple of tips about, okay, as a healthcare leader, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? So starting off then, the Pink Shirt Day came from, the origins of it began in Canada in 2007 when two students took a stand against homophobic bullying after a year 10 student was harassed and threatened for wearing pink. So the students that were going to be standing up brought dozens of pink shirts and distributed them to their classmates to wear the next day. The word got out online and hundreds of students showed up in pink to stand together against bullying. Now, it's been celebrated in Aotearoa since 2009, and I had a quick check back through photos, to be honest. That's what gave me the clue as to when I first kind of became aware of it and it started becoming a thing that I was aware of. And the photo I can find is 2017, which seems like a long time after it started, but there you go. That was potentially the first year that I kind of got involved in it. Now, a lot of the information, the stats and the background I'm getting from the Pink Shirt Day website, so I'll obviously put some of the links up for there. Now, they do fabulous resources. They've got an incredible array of things that you can use, like I've said, throughout the entire year. They have focuses around education and in schools, but also in the workplace. So it's around this idea of bullying and that it's not okay, and what do we need to do about it, and what are the impacts of it, but also the real clarity of definitions around what it is and what it isn't. But I wanted to start with just a couple of stats. Now, so I've got a background as being a nurse, and there is this great, terrible kind of phrase around nurses eating their young, and this kind of idea that bullying in nursing has been a thing and is a thing is just part of one of those accepted norms. And I did a bit of searching to try and find what are some recent stats around what we know about bullying within not only just nursing, but in the wider healthcare workforces. And I have to say, I gave up quite early, and I'm normally quite a good kind of burrower around and finding out stuff. I got hit by quite a lot of older articles and older things. I'm thinking, okay, that was 2013. What's going on now? So I kind of got a little bit disheartened by the struggle, but the articles I were finding were also quite depressing to keep reading about, to be honest. So one of the more recent ones I found, a 2017 study of New Zealand senior doctors carried out by their union ASMS, or their association. Disturbingly, nearly 37% reported being bullied, and curiously 67% reported witnessing bullying. International medical graduates seemed to suffer more, and emergency medicine was the speciality where it seemed to be happening the most. So that was where it is. But I found a lot of stats just around, and they all sat into this space of between 40 and up to 60% in various different sort of locations. So there's quite a lot of articles there that have looked at the prevalence of bullying, and from there it kind of takes you into some of the studies that look at the impacts of what bullying has. So there's a lot that goes on. We know it is pretty rife across the medical and the healthcare workforce, and actually one of the big drivers for me becoming involved in the first Pink Shirt Day that I did become involved in was around, my boss at the time was a surgeon, and there had been a recent study that had been highlighted through a front page article around in Australia around the sort of the sexual harassment and bullying that women in surgery were having to put up with, basically, if they wanted a career in surgery. And it was part of for him taking a stand against that kind of behaviour, but it also outlined the level of bullying across surgery as a profession or as a subspecialty. And so that led to something called Operate with Respect. I'll find the links for that as well, which was this stand for, okay, what are we going to do differently now that we kind of know this information? So I kind of stopped on the searching for the stats, because it was one of those, we know it's a thing, but what are we doing about it? And I guess, do we need to know, is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Are more people reporting it? I don't know. Not being huge into the research. I like reading about the research. So I'll put a few links, but there is quite a lot of information out there. And again, the same when I started looking at what are the impacts of bullying. Again, that was one of those things I thought, I need to stop reading this now. So it's huge, right? And if we think about some of the challenges for our healthcare workforce at the moment, so if you start thinking around the mental health problems, psychological distress, insomnia, headaches, taking more sick leave, leaving the profession, burnout, all of these things are going to be impacts of bullying. Now, when we think about that, the wider context and the bigger system, there are going to be other factors that influence, but bullying is going to have huge impacts when we've already got challenges within the workforce. So this is something that we know there's a lot of. We know it has bad impacts. So bringing to the case of, okay, what do we need to do about this? What do we need to do differently? And what do we need to understand? Now, one of the things I always find interesting when I'm reading about the stats, and particularly about the reporting of bullying, is as I got more involved in creating spaces and awareness within the place I was working around bullying, one of the important conversations was, what is bullying and what isn't bullying? And I think that's a good point for a personal story, because what's interesting about the concept of bullying is that you can be on both sides of the same coin quite easily. You can be being accused of being a bully, and you can be being feel that you are being bullied at the same time, potentially. So it's something that we can experience from a lot of perspectives. And for me, I think that the bonus of that, if you like, is that it allows space for empathy. It allows space for understanding that good processes and good support matter, regardless of where you're fitting in that picture. And the key thing into this was that understanding of what is bullying and what isn't it. So I'm just going to take a moment to read some of those definitions, because I think it is really important that we get clear on them. Okay, so I'm going to use the Pink Shirt Days site as reading the definition, but they've also tapped into WorkSafe quite a lot. So fabulous resources from WorkSafe. And another good place I found was Stop Bullying New Zealand, and they had some really cool things around helping you find out the definition or understanding the context in relation to answering the question, is this bullying or not, with the use of a flowchart. Their site is aimed more at education and schools, but again, really, really useful. So let's kick off with this definition. So workplace bullying is repeated and unreasonable behaviour directed towards people at work that can lead to physical or psychological harm. It may also include harassment, discrimination, or violence. It must be both repeated behaviour, persistent actions occurring more than once and can involve a range of actions over time, and unreasonable behaviour, actions that a reasonable person in the same circumstances would see as unreasonable. This includes victimising, humiliating, intimidating, or threatening a person. So there's some very clear guidelines in terms of that definition about being repeated behaviour, unreasonable behaviour, and it is leading to harm, either physical or psychological harm. So there's the state of the definition. I'm beginning to realise this is going to be sounding a very depressing podcast if I carry on like this. Anyway, so let's go to the some of the examples. It says workplace bullying can be via email, text messaging, or other social media channels. It can be carried out by one or more workers. It can occur outside normal working hours. It can be directed at one person or a group of workers. It can be targeted at other people involved in the workplace, such as clients or patients or students or customers, and it can be by others connected to a workplace, such as clients, patients, students, and customers. So let's just go back to that idea of having those conversations and that shared understanding of what bullying is. It's just it is a great conversation to get really, really clear. It's really important. Now, there was a point I was a charge nurse and I had been accused of bullying of being a bully by one of the staff members. Now, to be fair, this was a nurse I hadn't had the best relationship with. And so when this accusation of bullying came in, I really did stop and I go, oh my God, have I been bullying her? Have I been bullying her? If I have, I didn't mean to, and oh my God, that's awful. So it was a situation that really did throw me, really did create quite a sense of isolation, vulnerability, kind of fear, very demoralising. And what helped in that moment was really being able to understand what that definition of bullying is. So tapping into the WorkSafe resources, what they say bullying is not one-off or occasional instances of forgetfulness, rudeness, or tactlessness. Thank God, right? Because I have been tactless and rude for not good reasons, admittedly. And thank God I've been able to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. So those one-off things, because we are human beings. Thank God. So one-off occasional instances of forgetfulness, rudeness, or tactlessness. Bullying is not setting high performance standards. Bullying is not constructive feedback and legitimate advice or peer review. Bullying is not a manager requiring reasonable verbal or written work instructions to be carried out. Bullying is not warning or disciplining workers in line with the organisational or code of conduct. Bullying is not a single incident of unreasonable behaviour. And bullying is not reasonable management actions delivered in a reasonable way. Bullying is not differences in opinion or personality clashes that do not escalate into bullying, harassment, or violence. So WorkSafe there given a very clear list of what bullying is not. Again, so really, really helpful. And what helped me in that instance when I was undergoing a full HR process of review and investigation of whether I was a bully or not was me getting clear on that definition. and actually taking a very hard stance look at some of the things I heard, the conversations I'd had with her, the things I'd expected of her. And it was sitting there going, no, I was expecting her to do her job. So very tough place to be in, I felt. And like I say, very isolating, very vulnerable, very fearful, and quite a drawn out process. So I think this comes down to that idea of, regardless of what side you sit, whether you are being bullied or whether you are being accused of being a bully, the process matters. Having a good process matters. Having good people that can follow that process in a timely manner, that gives you confidence around that. But I think the other thing in there, because you're also not allowed to talk to anybody about it, what's going on, is where do you get that support from? So I think they are some key things when I think about both sides of when I have felt bullied and when I have been accused of being a bully, those two sides of that coin. So there we go. We've got a bit of background around why Pink Shirt Day matters and where it sort of started to come from. The fact that within the healthcare workforce, we know bullying goes on and we know it has impacts that we could really do without right now because we've got enough struggles as it is. Talked about what bullying is and what it isn't. And then we've talked about, and we've kind of weaved in some of those sort of the things that can support regardless of where you're sitting in that time and in that moment. And so on the blog post, I wrote, if we think about this from the perspective of you're a new leader in healthcare, or you've just taken on to a new team, and all of a sudden somebody comes up to you and says, I'm being bullied. Now, it's one of those things that you kind of go, oh my God, what do I do now? You know it's serious, you know it's important, and you want to do well in this situation. So what are the first steps? And I think this is one of those important things about having a network and building up people around you. You're going to need some help. Even if you've dealt with this on a number of occasions and a number of times, getting help and a different perspective and support through it really helps. Because these are often complex or difficult scenarios to kind of work through, and getting that other perspective and sense checking your bias maybe, or your assumptions that you might be making going into something is really important. So you're going to need someone to help you. But what are the first things that you do? Now I run through this in quite a lot of detail on the blog and putting a bit more into the email as well. So if you want to check either of those out, that'd be great. So you can find the blog post at katiequinney.com. And then again, there'll be the more resources and even more information put into the email. So you can subscribe to that, katiequinney.com/subscribe. And if this is a thing that is either a problem for you because you are being bullied right now, or if you are struggling with someone or managing this process, please get help. A great number to call in New Zealand is if you're struggling with that space of being bullied and feeling like you have no one to turn to, and you're getting very concerned about the impacts that it's having, or you are feeling incredibly isolated and in an unsafe situation, is 1737. This is a 24/7 number that you can phone free, and there's someone on the other end of that line that is going to be able to help you work through, get the resources, listen to you in that first instant, and point you in the right direction for the best support that you need. That's 1737. Just as a sideline, I learned about that resource and that number from a mental health first aid course that I did recently. So there's this real connection here between the mental health impacts of bullying and how do we support people with in a mental health first aid situation within a work context. But maybe I'll add that into that list of future topics for this podcast. So your first steps, if you're the manager and someone's coming up to you and saying, I'm being bullied, what is it that you're going to do? What's this practical advice here? Now we understand a little bit more about this context of bullying. So the first thing is take it seriously. And so I mean here, put down your phone, shut the door, stop doing what you're doing, listen to this person. Show them that you are taking this seriously by not rolling your eyes, not going, oh, okay, that huff, that all those kind of very subtle signs that give out a big clue to say, I don't have time for this right now. So take this seriously, because it's probably taken that person a lot of courage to come to you, is feeling quite fearful as it is. So if someone is coming to you and saying, I'm being bullied, please take it seriously. Second thing is, so you're in that state, get the whole story. Ask them what's going on. Listen and listen well. This is one of those occasions that you can really tap into that active and very sincere listening state. You need to give them the space to be able to tell their story. Now, this is really useful for a number of reasons that I won't dive into completely right now, but listening and getting their full story really, really matters. The next thing that you do is ask them what they want. What does good resolution or a good outcome look like for them? What change needs to happen? What do they expect from the process? Give them time to think about it, because to be fair, that might be the first time they've even considered, what do I want? What does a good outcome look like for me? You don't need to comment in anything. You don't need to answer in that space. You just need to, again, listen to what they said so you have some idea as to what they're looking for. Then commit to following up. Give yourself a timeline to get back to them and check that they're okay with that timeline. Make sure that they are safe in that interim point. So again, the resources, the help that they need around things, and this is where that mental health first aid can be a really useful toolkit to have for you. And then it's about getting the help that you need. Like I say, even if you have gone through this process a number of times, you know what the thing is, you need someone to sense check this stuff with. So this is about checking in on your local policies, checking in on code of conducts, all of that sort of stuff, and putting those things together. And then you can and that's all you need to remember in the first instance, because then it's about the various different, the context, the stories. There's always a lot more to do in this space. It is not as simple as those 5 steps, but they're the 5 things to get you going when you're faced at the end of the day, when someone just grabs you as you're just about to walk out the door. You've got your 5 steps to kind of walk through. So I feel like the need for sort of jingly music or something here to kind of lift us up a little bit. And again, it's one of those podcasts that has gone on longer than I thought it would. I think because it's those stories of why this matters and the connection between understanding that Pink Shirt Day is a fabulous day, fabulous set of resources, amazing ways of pulling out the positive aspects of working together, as well as understanding that standing up to bullying, preventing bullying, and what to do in the instances of bullying are important elements of being a leader in healthcare. We know that it happens, and there's a lot of research out there about the extent that it happens. We know it has bad impacts, and there's a lot of research out there and evidence around the impacts, and we know we've got enough struggles as it is in the healthcare workforce, so let's not add it to it with this stuff. And we know that good processes, understanding definitions, having conversations, how do you bring the conversations forward around what it is and around behaviours at work? How do we bring in values? There's so much into this context, into this subject. I get quite excited, as you can tell. And then what are the first 5 things? What are the first steps to do when someone comes to you as a leader, as their manager, when they say, I'm being bullied? What are you going to do? Lots more information on the blog. I'll put a link to that a blog post in the show notes. And thank you again for listening. I'm like, yeah, okay, that was bullying. That was a really great idea for a topic for a podcast. What were you thinking? I was thinking this is important. It's one of those topics that we do need to talk about, and we do need to share some stuff and how we learn about it. This could be your first step. You could be avoiding this topic because you've been bullied and you don't want to face it, and there's a whole load of stuff that could be going on. But let's just get more used to talking about what it is, what it isn't, what resources you need, what help you need, and get our processes around so that wherever you are on that spectrum or side of the coin, that there is support, that there is a good and a timely process, and that we can work towards good outcomes for people. So thank you again. I'll try and wrap up now. Thank you again for listening. I'm Katie. You can find out more about the work that I do at www.katiequinney.com. I would love to hear from you of how you're finding the podcast, what topics you would like covered. I've got this great line in the email where I also take requests. So if there is a topic you want to dive into as a healthcare leader, I would love to hear from you. Take care, have a fabulous week, and see you next week in the Leadership Lounge.